10 kings with the most bizarre habits. The smell hit the ambassadors before they even stepped into the throne room. It was as if someone had died, sun-baked for a week, then basted in rotten eggs and human waste. No one had died. That was simply King James I of England on a good day. The same monarch who authorized the Bible, still read by millions, could go years without a proper bath. His tongue was too large for his mouth, so he drooled. His clothes were alive with lice that courtiers swore they could see performing acrobatics. Keep that image in your mind, because James, magnificently malodorous James, is just the warm-up act. What follows is a cavalcade of crowned oddities whose habits make modern celebrities look like models of restraint. Power without limits does not polish the soul, it warps it. Give a person a golden throne, a bottomless treasury, and an army of courtiers trained to applaud, and you rarely get a philosopher king. More often, you get someone who puts a horse on the cabinet list, laughs himself to death over a bad joke, or outlaws red cars because he wants them all. Here, then, are 10 of the most spectacularly strange rulers in recorded history. 10. Peter III of Russia, the emperor who played with dolls, a grown man, an emperor, and a knight. Owl of weaponized second-hand embarrassment. Peter III did not collect dolls as a quaint hobby. He played with them voices, elaborate plots, the work sand he forced his court, including his wife, the future Catherine the Great, to play along until 2 or 3 in the morning. Imagine being one of the most intelligent, ambitious women of the 18th century, reduced to voicing a toy cavalryman. Come on, Catherine, make the horses charge. Nay, properly. Peter's enthusiasms were equally misplaced. He adored Prussia, wore Prussian uniforms, spoke German at his Russian court, and once convened a court-martial for a rat that chewed through his toy soldiers. After a solemn trial, he pardoned the offender for its discipline. Absolute power tends to invite fantasy. Peter simply leaned all the way in. Officially, he died of hemorrhoidal colic. Unofficially, Catherine's supporters removed a problem that refused to grow up. 9 Farouk of Egypt, the kleptomaniac king in a sea of Red King Farouk, had palaces, yachts, and an income so vast it could have funded a small constellation. So, what did he do for fun? He picked pockets. Statesmen left meetings lighter than they entered. Winston Churchill reportedly departed minus his watch. Dinner guests discovered missing wallets, medals, and jewelry, because the King of Egypt was practicing a party trick he called the Hand of the Thief. Farouk's tastes ran scarlet. He owned hundreds of red cars and proclaimed that no one else in Egypt could drive one. See a red car? Confiscate it and add it to the collection. He maintained what was reputed to be the world's largest stash of erotic material purely for educational purposes. He said with a straight face and ate until reinforced furniture groaned. A kingdom at his command, and he turned himself into a pickpocket in a traffic cone. 8. Martin the Humane of Aragon, slain by a terrible joke. The year was 1410. King Martin of Aragon had just polished off an entire goose knot, a portion. The bird, his jester, hoping to cut through the grease fog, offered a joke. A deer caught stealing figs was hung by its tail from a tree. That was it, no punchline. Martin began to laugh and did not stop for 3 hours. His face purpled, he slid from his chair, and died on the floor in a wheezing fit of delight. Spare a thought for the jester, whose job description did not include manslaughter. What happened to my predecessor? The next king might ask. Well, sire, I told a story about a deer and horticultural theft. Gallows humor writes itself. 7. Christian VII of Denmark, diplomatic slaps and a dog. Minister Christian VII was not cruel so much as chaotically unwell. His doctors, despairing at his excessive solitary habits, built a special chair to prevent injury. He would slap people at random, courtiers, servants, even foreign dignitaries, often mid-banquet, peace talks, slap wedding, slap. Nighttime turned the palace into an obstacle course. Christian sprinted through corridors, smashing furniture, leaped across banquet tables during formal dinners, and once appointed his dog a government minister, then expected the council to take the animal's opinions seriously. He insisted on playing leapfrog with ambassadors in the throne room. What is the correct diplomatic response when a king crouches and says, "Your turn"? 6. Caligula of Rome, when your co-worker is a horse with Caligula. Weird becomes performance art. He adored his horse Incitatus, housing it in a marble stable with an ivory manger, dressing it in jewels and imperial purple de color that could get a commoner executed damned, inviting it to dinner parties as a guest. Servants poured wine into golden goblets, while Caligula discussed public policy with the animal. He supposedly planned to make Incitatus a consul, which is a polite way of saying prime minister. Imagine losing a promotion to a stallion. With excellent punctuality, Caligula also declared himself a god-standard emperor behavior, but made it interactive. He cosplayed different deities and demanded tailored worship. Jupiter on Monday, Venus on Tuesday, Neptune on Wednesday. He even built a floating bridge 3 miles across the Bay of Naples so he could ride his horse over the water while wearing Alexander the Great's breastplate. The project did nothing, went nowhere, and existed solely to troll a prophecy. Petty, certainly memorable. Eternally. 5. Ludwig II of Bavaria, the fairy tale king who dined with ghosts. Mad Ludwig II loved Wagner's operas and medieval romance so completely that he tried to live inside them. He built a bouquet of fantasy castles, including Neuschwanstein, the model for Disney's Cinderella castle. He ordered servants into period costume, slept by day, ruled by night, and installed a man-made grotto with colored light and a small boat shaped like a shell so he could drift about, dressed as Lohengrin, the Swan Knight. His imagination did not stop at architecture. Ludwig held formal dinners for the Dead Place settings for Louis XIV, Marie Antoinette, and other long-departed royals. Servants poured wine for empty chairs, refreshed untouched plates, and endured the kings. Earnest toasts to ghostly health. On a darker day, he reportedly had a servant's false teeth extracted because their clicking spoiled the atmosphere of his fairy tale world. Even dreams can bite. For Ibrahim I of the Ottoman Empire, fur, sugar, and a night of drowning. 22 years confined in the Kefsir gilded prison for Ottoman princes Ibrahim. I reached the throne already haunted by fear. He smothered that fear in fur. Not coats alone, walls, floors, ceilings, everything swaddled in sable. He perfumed his beard with amber and waddled beneath garments so heavy with jewels and pelts he could barely move. His appetite for large beauty became imperial policy. Agents scoured the empire for the fattest woman. They found an Armenian nicknamed Beccaper Sugarcube, around whom Ibrahim built a courtly obsession. Then the paranoia metastasized, convinced his concubines had betrayed him. Ibrahim had approximately 280 women tied in sacks and drowned in the Bosporus in a single night. Chroniclers record that one escaped, loosening her bonds and swimming to a French ship to tell the tale. Power can be ridiculous. It can also be terminal. 3. Qin Shi Huang of China, Immortality by Mercury, the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, unified China, standardized script and weights, commissioned the Terracotta Army, and then set his empire on fire looking for eternal life. Terrified of death, he sent expeditions to mythical isles and embraced alchemy when the ocean refused to yield secrets. Court magicians assured him that mercury was the key. He swallowed mercury pills, bathed in mercury, and ultimately designed his tomb with rivers of liquid mercury to mirror the cosmos underground. Predictably, the poison magnified his paranoia. Qin dug tunnels, linking some 270 palaces, never slept twice in the same room, and sent identical carriages in different directions so assassins could not know which one carried him. He ordered the burning of books outside agriculture, medicine, and divination, and the burial alive of scholars who protested numbers vary. But the traditional figure is 460. Even in death, the regime quailed. Officials reportedly hid his corpse for weeks, masking the smell with carts of rotting fish. He sought immortality and achieved it in the worst possible way, through unforgettable infamy, too. Adolf Fredrik of Sweden. Death by desertion, the 12th of February, 1771. Adolf Fredrik sat to what reads like a dare. He consumed lobster, caviar, sauerkraut, smoked herring, and a heroic supply of champagne, then dug into his favorite dessert, the cardamom-scented cream bun known as the He did not stop at 1, nor 2, he ate 14. Servants watched the King of Sweden shovel pastry into his face until his stomach visibly swelled. He rose from the table, took a step, and collapsed dead. The court delicately called it digestive problems. Posterity preferred accuracy. The king who ate himself to death. He contributed little to politics, but gifted historians a cautionary tale with powdered sugar on top. 1 Henry VIII of England, a walking infection with a crown. You already know about Henry VIII and the wives, but the smell tells the truer story. After a catastrophic jousting accident in 1536, Henry carried a wound in his leg that never healed. It closed, filled with pus, burst, and repeated. Courtiers claimed they could identify his location from 3 rooms away by the stench. Physicians drained pints of pus and, in a triumph of Renaissance medicine, packed the wound with ground pearls and gold leafets. If infection respected luxury goods, by the end, Henry weighed roughly 400 pounds on a 6'2" frame. Doors were widened, floors reinforced. A hoist lifted him onto horses. Breakfast could be a whole chicken plus beef, bread soaked in wine, ale, and pastries. Dinner might consist of 13 meat dishes washed down by wine in gallon measures. He blamed failed consummations on his wife's appearance when the truth was simpler. Obesity, pain, and infection reduced him to a biologically uncooperative tyrant. Modern doctors suspect type 2 diabetes, which can sweeten urine and attract flies, mingled with possible traumatic brain injury from the same jousting crash, splaining the wild mood swings. He ordered executions in the morning and forgot them by afternoon. When Henry died in 1547, his massive body was sealed in a lead-lined coffin. Left overnight at Sion House en route to Windsor, the lining split under the gases of decay, and fluids seeped onto the floor. By morning, dogs were found licking the royal remains. The man who sundered England from Rome ended as a cautionary parable on the tile. Coda, why these stories matter. Wit is tempting to file all this under weird trivia and move on, but the pattern is the point. From Peter III's dolls to Farouk. Pockets, from Ibrahim's drowning to Qin Shi Huang's Mercury. Each tale shows what happens when the most basic limits on human behavior are removed. With no one to say no, habits curdle into policy, whim grows teeth, and private eccentricities spill into public ruin. So the next time you think your boss is eccentric, consider the alternatives. At least they aren't making you play with toy soldiers until 2 a.m. At least they haven't promoted a horse to senior management. At least they bathe more than twice in 72 years. And at least, with luck, they won't require the maintenance staff to widen the doorways. Power reveals unchecked, power deforms. History remembers the deformations most of all.